Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. Each episode will bring you a new topic or interview related to brain health and wellness as part of my mission to help you on the path to a healthier, happier brain. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I have not one, but two fabulous guests today from the Dysautonomia Project, Cheryl Faber and Dr. June Bryant. Cheryl joined the Dysautonomia Project in 2015 and has been integral to its growth. She understands firsthand how debilitating dysautonomia symptoms can be by witnessing the TDP founding director Kelly Freeman's health decline. Cheryl's deep passion to help fulfill TDP's mission to educate healthcare professionals, patients, and communities about dysautonomia pairs perfectly with her long-standing professional experience as an educator. As TDP's Director of Education, Cheryl oversees, develops, and facilitates training programs on autonomic disorders and POTS to multiple audiences, including physicians, nurses, allied health professionals, clinic staff, school nurses, and BSN-MSN students. In addition, she participates in national and regional conferences to spread dysautonomia awareness. Dr. June Bryant is a board-certified pediatric nurse practitioner and assistant professor of nursing at the University of Colorado. She brings over 12 years of pediatric primary care experience and is the founder of Dr. Junie's Examina van. I didn't ask you about pronunciation at first, but I hope that's right.
It's perfect.
Florida's first autonomous nurse practitioner-led mobile pediatric practice. In academia, Dr. Bryant teaches at both undergraduate and graduate levels, focusing on pediatric health, advanced assessment, and evidence-based practice. She is actively engaged in curriculum development, simulation-based education, and preparing nurse practitioner students for clinical excellence. Dr. Bryant serves as immediate past president of the Florida Gulf Coast chapter of the National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners, and as medical ambassador for the Dysautonomia Project, where she advances education and advocacy for families, providers, and schools. She frequently presents at state and national conferences on autonomic dysfunction, dysautonomia, and nursing entrepreneurship. Thank you both for being here so much today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and thanks for putting up with me reading the bios. I always do it at the beginning so that you can hear all the wonderful things that you've done and remind you of just why I invited you to come on the show with me today. So first off, for anyone listening, I always like to get a little background story. So what got you interested in doing what you're doing now?
For me, it was watching Kelly and seeing her journey. This is someone that I've known for 30 years, and she had been so active and so involved and going 100 miles an hour so successfully. And then something changed, and she just became very sick and bedridden. And I was then introduced I had been working for Kelly and her husband's for-profit business, but then they started this nonprofit, and I couldn't even pronounce the title, Dysautonomia, the Dysautonomia Project. But I began doing a little bit of side help there, and very quickly saw Kelly's journey and realized how many other people were going through something very similar. And I've always had a passion for education. That's been my line of work. And so the more I learned about it, the more I just wanted to be a part of that. So I've been with them going on, I'm getting close to 11 years. And the more I saw people suffering and the more I saw people waiting years for diagnosis, and the more I understood how dismissed patients were and they weren't validated, I just thought, this isn't okay. We need to do something about this. And so I was really excited to become part of the solution. I see myself doing this for a really long time.
So as usual, anything that is very personal to you, becomes a vested interest. And so I remember, it was when I first started practicing, when I first started practicing, I had a patient that I could not diagnose. I mean, we finally did, but it was after 6 months of sending them out. And I was frustrated as a new provider. I just didn't understand why I didn't have the information I needed. And anyone that I asked also didn't have any answers for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I was like, okay, when they finally told me the diagnosis that they received and that it was, it fell under the umbrella of dysautonomia, I was like, I need to learn more about this because I will not let this happen to me. I'm not going to let this happen to my patients ever again. And then when I was working in the school district, the Dysautonomia Project came and gave a presentation. And I was, of course, here I am already vested in this. And I'm like, have I not heard about them? So then I went and introduced and I said, I need to be involved, and I'm going to tell you why. And so since then, that was the first step of that
Mhm.
relationship. And I've been with them and an advocate for these and following their mission ever since. And so I truly wholeheartedly believe in this organization and their mission. And I really do believe that we're helping save lives.
Yep. And that was in 2017. I remember meeting June at that presentation. Thanks to her interest in education and her level of commitment and her just constant thirst for knowledge in this area, she's become, so highly regarded for her knowledge. And it's because of June and others like her that come alongside us that we're able to really broaden our reach and do what we do. So thanks, June. You're never going anywhere.
And we say that because June just moved from Florida to Colorado, so
Yes,
I
but
did.
we're
she changed a little bit there.
I know.
we can still work together, but yeah, it's funny. She just moved on
We're
me.
just expanding our reach. That's all
That's
I
right.
see. It's always a positive, right? We
Absolutely.
are.
That's right.
That's funny. So, yeah, so funny you mentioned the whole personal connection because I didn't know as much about dysautonomia. I mean, I knew about it. I'd worked in neurology for a long time, but really got a huge passion for it myself after we were talking before the break or before we hit record today. After my own injury, car accident back in 2023, where I had my own issues with autonomic dysfunction. So it put me down this rabbit hole of just trying to learn as much as I
Mhm.
could to help my patients because I see it quite a bit. So that's part of why I reached out to get you guys on the show today because I had been to the website multiple times just educating myself and was just really impressed with what you guys have going on. So I'd love to share with our listeners a little bit more and we've talked about dysautonomia a little bit on other episodes, but just kind of globally, what is the Dysautonomia Project itself? So we've mentioned the name a couple times, but
Mhm.
what exactly is it?
We're a nonprofit organization, and our sole mission is education. So we're based here in Clearwater. We're a C3 tax exempt organization. So everything that comes into us, donations, book sales, it all goes back into education to be able to help providers and patients and communities. And so we are led by, a small staff here in Clearwater, but we have a global reach with our educational efforts. We educate through virtual presentations, in-person presentations, conferences, a one-day program for practicing clinicians on autonomic medicine, a 3-day mini fellowship for medical residents, just lots of different things. We're very open to customizing, but everything we do is so that people can learn more about what this condition is and the different forms of dysautonomia that fall under that umbrella so that we can try to get a reduction in time to diagnosis and get patients the help that they need. And like June mentioned, get providers and clinicians the knowledge that they need to be able to treat their patients. We've been around since 2014 when Kelly and her husband founded the organization.
Awesome. Where did the idea of the organization come from?
So after Kelly and her husband went on their own personal journey to get answers to what was wrong and what was happening, and it took a while to do that, and they finally met a physician who suffered from POTS and some other things himself, so he understood it. And as they were listening, they were just absorbing all of this information. And they just said, education makes such a difference. If more people knew about what this was, if we could spread awareness, spread this knowledge, share all of this information, it could help. And so that's when the idea was born and the mission was set to be, the premier educator in autonomic medicine.
And as far as like outcomes, do you have separate tracks for providers and patients or what's the thought there?
In terms of the different educational programs,
Yeah.
yes, we do. For patients, we have a wonderful annual virtual program called Discourse. In the past, we had done it in person, but we have found with patients, it's easier for so many to do it virtually and to do it, through the afternoon, not have to get up early in the morning and go somewhere. And we have speakers from, all over the country that help support on different topics. So we do that for them. For clinicians who are practicing, we have the one-day CME accredited clinician program, which is going to be January 30th of 2026. It's in person and you can watch it live stream. We have for residents, medical residents in their PGY 2-year and higher, a mini fellowship that runs concurrently from Wednesday to Saturday with that program. And we are constantly looking at developing additional programs to meet our different audiences. June and I will often work in tandem, whether it's through podcast invitations or in-person education at local nursing professional groups, or this year we've had a number of virtual requests as well as we meet people at conferences. So we are so open to whatever that need is and meeting it. So anytime we meet someone, especially, who is practicing, we say, tell us about what your needs are. How many people are in your group? What do you want to learn? Let us develop something for you and figure out how we can share that education.
That's awesome. June, as an ambassador, then what does your
So my role is I'm really a strong advocate for getting the information out there. So my passion is announcing that I do feel like I am maybe not an official specialist, but being knowledgeable and being educated, we say that that's the number one treatment
Mhm.
anyway, is education. And so really finding those avenues, I think that other than just going to conferences, submitting abstracts, trying to get the information out there, it's more finding the right avenues. And Cheryl and I brainstorm on this all the time because
Mhm.
the more and more we go to these conferences, the more we realize where these needs are. For example, we were just at the American Autonomic Society conference and we had a dentist come up and say,
Mhm.
"You are so needed. No one knows about this." And I'm like, "Dentists." I was like, "That's right, because that's a lot of times that's where a trigger can happen." And I'm like, mind is blown. Yes, you are absolutely right. But not only that, just all these interdisciplinary collaborations with everyone everyone that comes into contact with this but doesn't even realize what it is and how beneficial it would be to be more knowledgeable about it, so that our patients don't continue to be dismissed. And
Mhm.
I think I'm going way off topic, but I think that that's important, as my role is to recognize where it's needed and then
Mhm.
also be willing to bring the information that they need that's tailored to their profession.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was gonna ask you, what's your most surprising specialty that's been related? But so is there another one other than dentistry, I guess? Because I wouldn't have even thought of that either, actually.
I don't know,
Mhm.
Cheryl, you can help me out on this one, but, actually just a lot, of like, physical therapists, occupational therapists, nutrition, we've been on
Mhm.
podcasts for multiple, and not just not even realizing how big of an impact each of these have, but how important it is for all of them to collaborate and understand the single patient, because it doesn't matter. We can send them to the known specialist, right? Cardiologists, neurology, we can send them, but there's so many aspects to an individual's lives that need to be aware of this condition. Otherwise, they're going to be left feeling dismissed, like, oh, they don't understand me. They don't
Mhm.
understand why I can't get through the day. School nurses, like going to schools, and especially because I'm pediatrics, of course.
Mhm.
So that's a big deal, is making sure that they understand what these students need to be successful. So I'll let Cheryl hop in and say what her surprised me. But I think dentist got
That was
me.
it.
That
Yeah.
one got me. I was like, "That's right. That is so true." So,
Yeah. Ditto everything June said, and I think that would be the surprising one too. Yeah, and it really does cross all disciplines. But that one I wasn't necessarily expecting. But yeah, it can be a trigger there. And so how exciting that that dentist recognized the need for this and wanted to learn more and have us talk with other dentists as well.
As I was initially kind of relearning everything about the autonomic nervous system after my injury, I think the biggest one that struck me was the GI symptoms. Because
Mhm.
I always thought about the sympathetic and parasympathetic, but I hadn't really been thinking about the enteric nervous system. So that slips a lot of people's minds, I think, when somebody comes in and they've got diarrhea or constipation or this lack of hunger, all these different things going on, there could certainly be this autonomic component, and we're not really recognizing that a lot, I think.
Yeah. That's
right.
absolutely the case, and it's crazy how many different organ systems are impacted and how many different symptoms people can have, and they can all present so differently, but GI is one that we hear very commonly,
Mhm.
and you've probably seen too in your practice, June,
Mm,
I would think.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah,
and just how
motility
closely
issues.
Yeah, and how closely it is tied to things like cyclic vomiting syndrome and like mast cell activation syndrome and Ehlers-Danlos. Like all of these play a role and definitely, but usually it's that dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system and those symptoms that we see. It's not the symptoms of those conditions. It's actually the ones that are most disabling is the dysfunction of the autonomic system, whether that be sympathetic, parasympathetic, enteric, all parts, right? And that's what makes the condition so confusing is because it doesn't have to just focus on one part of the autonomic nervous system. It doesn't have to focus on one system at all, which makes it so confusing. And I don't want to say this negatively, but time consuming because we need to dive into each of these to bring each of these symptoms to light so we know how to treat the patient individually. It's not, we can just give this medication and poof, it's all gone, right?
Right.
And that's where we need time, we need patience, we need to listen to our patients, we need to see where it's affecting their lives and what symptoms it's affecting. So then that way we can tailor that treatment in the best way possible.
Once you started doing some of the training, June, did you find that your taking of histories changed with patients?
Yes, of course. So what's interesting, so I work in primary care. That's my love, that's my passion, right? And we have our standard set of questions that we ask. When I know that I'm seeing a patient that has concerns for dysautonomia, number one, not does that appointment gets extended automatically. I'm already like, okay, but I come in with my clinical assessment form.
Mhm.
Thankful for TDP for that because it gives me a basis. Now, a lot of those questions are actually tailored for adults. So I do have to alter it a little bit for kids, depending on what age. I just saw a patient this past weekend. I spent 2 hours with them, but it was really tailoring it to the questions for an 8-year-old and letting the 8-year-old answer me. But I'm also asking the 8-year-old because they can answer some questions for me too. But I'm also talking to the parents. So that appointment is going to take twice as long because I want to see how it all mingles together. And I really think that that's like it's really helped having these guides and so thankful for TDP for being able to put these together, especially with someone who doesn't have knowledge. Cheryl and I talk about this all the time because I teach, I'm a professor. And so when we're looking at the different textbooks, there's only a section this big on the autonomic nervous system. And basically it's just talking about fight or flight, right? It's talking
Mhm.
about that. It actually doesn't go into all of the disorders of. And so that's another thing that I'm trying to advocate for is that I'm going to try and make maybe a little bit more on the disorders and how to recognize them. Because
Mhm.
even if we get that blurb of how to put it in our differentials, it'll be so meaningful to so many providers not to feel the way I did in the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it's a big kind of disservice that we do to that whole list of diagnoses because we don't do a lot in our medical education, medical nurse practitioner, any of it. We just don't get a lot. And most of what we get is POTS, which is only about 10% of all the dysautonomias. So
Yeah.
it's just a tiny little fraction that we even hear about. We don't hear about all of these other things. Before we got on, I was telling you guys, I bought my version of the book and I was
Look at
reading
your
it.
tabs. Look at
I
your
know,
little
I got
tabs in
Love
there.
it.
because I'm a nerd and I do that. But as I was reading through there, I was just floored by all the things that can be a dysautonomia. So personally wise, like I mentioned, I had issues after my injury, but now reading through a lot of the things in the book, I think I actually personally had more issues with dysautonomia before I even had a brain injury. I was
Mm.
diagnosed with Sjogren's. When I was a kid, I had vasovagal syncope and I didn't even put all of these two and two things together. So it's just kind of funny seeing how those things can be related and knowing those terms and knowing those diagnoses. I never knew that they had anything to do with dysautonomia before.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you'll even start to show signs before any kind of injury, but we just don't recognize it or it's blown off, right? It's
Mhm.
like your parents saying, oh, it's hormonal. Drink more water, which is a good thing. I mean, they're not necessarily wrong, right? It is always good to drink more water, but it's just very interesting that you'll start to see some of those signs. You have no idea how many times Cheryl and I have been giving presentations and how many people come up afterwards saying, I think I have this, or I think my best
Yes.
friend has this, or I think my mom has this. I've seen patients that struggle with this. Why hasn't this been brought up? So I think that just gives more meaning to what we do and why we're continuing to do what we do.
And the pandemic brought this forefront as well. There's more news articles and more celebrities and things that, are getting a POTS diagnosis or reporting that it took a long time to find help. So it's in the news now more and getting a little bit more recognition as well. But yeah, it's crazy that it can still take so long for someone to get help.
Yeah, well, I believe it, as I have a couple patients that I've been trying to get in for a tilt table test, and it's been months just trying to get that referral place. There are delays just in the whole diagnostic um, plan of all of it, just trying to get the right people in place, get the referrals in place.
Right.
So even beyond the identification that this might even be a possibility, kind of trying to get to that next step can be a hurdle in itself.
Absolutely.
So I was very fascinated by all of the post-viral type of things in here, like with the COVID type of situation. The one thing that I saw missing, and this is the second edition that just came out, but there wasn't a lot about post-traumatic dysautonomias. So what are your thoughts on that? Have you heard much about it or had much experience, either of you, as much as I've seen in my own clinic, I guess?
So, yes, especially post-concussive, we see or at least I do, and I think that's more well, and, I don't see adults, so that's hard for me to talk from that standpoint, like, especially post-car accidents and all of that, I see more a lot of post-concussive, and I wouldn't even say I've seen a lot from, like, athletics, but a lot of times it's not really the concussion that starts it. Maybe they vasovagal, which was probably the first, and then they fell and they hit their head in the shower. So then the parents will attribute their symptoms to like concussion, and then it lingers forever, which is actually goes into that autonomic dysfunction part, right? When it's lingering for so long and they have fatigue and headaches and all of that. Yeah, we do see that. And actually, I agree with you. There probably isn't a lot on that in that book, but that's definitely something to consider
Mhm.
for the next
Volume
version
3.
in 10
Yeah,
years. No, not in 10
absolutely.
years.
But other than that, I was incredibly impressed, and I love how you separate it out for patients and for clinicians. So one book that can kind of hit two birds with one stone there. What are some of the biggest things of feedback, I guess, you've gotten from these resources like this?
Well, that format is extremely popular. So when the second edition was being considered, we asked, should we do this again? And it was a resounding yes. So that's really popular because it is a resource for both the layman and someone who would like a deeper medical dive. The resources in the appendix, especially like the diagnostic criteria that's in there this time, is super helpful. And adding even more chapters has been really popular. I think it's just been a really good overview book that anybody can read and understand and have this on their radar to be able to, just in conversation, pick up on symptoms somebody's describing or things that may seem like they don't relate or go together at all, and yet they do. I'm not a nurse, but just knowing what I know for the last 11 years, I can hear it and sort of identify it and say, okay, I think this is it. Go see this person or that person. So I think this book, it is really good at giving that bird's eye, 30,000-foot view education. I think the second edition goes into even more detail, but it's given so many people hope and validated so many people. We've heard over and over and over again, oh my gosh, this is me. I didn't even realize, or this is my friend, or this is my mom, or my dad, or whatever. They see themselves on those pages, and that's been really powerful.
Yeah, yeah, it's really easy to read, so good job. Kudos for all the writers, including June. You've got a chapter in there as well.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah, she does. Kelly did such a great job with the writing and getting the support of experts and those like June with just such a passionate message to share. So it was great job, everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me more about this clinician program coming up in January.
Yes, have you signed up yet?
I was going to ask you about it today, so I'm glad you brought it up, actually.
Yes, yes. So this is going to be the second year we've done it. It always runs on the Friday that we do the residence course. So we have, for that 3.5-day mini fellowship, we have this world leading faculty of top autonomic experts. And so we wanted to take their knowledge and expertise and be able to share that in a one-day program with those that are already in practice. So that's what we do. It's going to be January 30th. It is in person in Clearwater Beach at the Marriott Resort on Sand Key, but the in-person is being limited to 25 spots so that there can be engagement with the faculty, but it is also going to be live streamed. This is going to happen for the first time. The previous year, it was not live streamed because there was just such a large request for it. So we already have a large live stream registration, which is really exciting. So if you want to sign up, anybody can go to our website. Just scroll down to the very bottom. There's a box that says clinician program. You can learn more about the agenda, the faculty, the registration cost, and come be a part of it. It's a really good overview in one day. I mean, and there's a lot to cover in autonomic medicine. It's pretty heavy hitting, the course, but you'll walk away with more tools and more knowledge to
And this
able
is
to help.
probably the closest that as especially as advanced practice providers that you'll get to any kind of specialization, I would say, in autonomic medicine, other than going to things like the American Autonomic Society conferences and things like that, because there's not a specific program for this, especially for clinicians. So it's super beneficial to at least see if this is something that they're interested in and then continuing to expand that reach. So I definitely highly recommend it. And always learn something new every time I listen.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, there's the fellowship for the physicians. We need something for nurse practitioners, like a certification or something. Put that in your thought box for next time.
We are already thinking about it. So I'm already starting the talks about it with some of these specialists. Stay
Awesome.
tuned.
Awesome. Awesome. I know. I keep looking. I'm like, what can I do to like broaden my resume and just make it look a little bit better in all of these areas?
Yeah, well, we'd love to have you participate. It would really be great. And if you want to come down to the beautiful, sunny Florida beaches, you can, or you can, do it from the comfort of your own home in the snow.
I'll be there.
I know.
I'll be there in person.
Good
I'm
reason to
flying
go.
in for it.
I'll
So
have to look and see what flights cost from Minnesota to Florida in that time of year. Everybody wants to get away from the cold in January. So might be a little expensive, but we'll see. So awesome project there. Do you have any other things about the organization that you'd like to share that we haven't talked about so far?
I just would encourage anyone who wants to learn more or is wondering, is this something I have? Do I not? To go to the website. There is so much information. And I'm really glad you've mentioned that patient assessment tool because it's the only one of its kind. And if someone has been diagnosed, they can use that to track symptoms. But if they've not been diagnosed and they're wondering if all these random things they're experiencing could be autonomic dysfunction, go spend the time, answer those questions, receive an email, take a look at your results, and take that to a doctor or a nurse practitioner and evaluate it together. There's also, a lot of videos that we did with the American Autonomic Society. So there's opportunities for patients to learn and for clinicians to learn. Read the book. If you've not read the book and if your listeners haven't read the book, order the book. It's really good. Again, it's that if you don't like to read, you only have to read half because half is for patients, half is for clinicians. And don't hesitate to reach out to us at info@dysproject.org with any questions, or if you want to learn more and you don't see something offered in one of our current programs, we're more than happy to talk with you. And there's also a clinician finder on that website. And that's really key because so many times people are wondering, well, what provider do I go to? Or even providers, clinicians are saying, well, who do I refer to? So this is like a living document and we're always wanting to build that. So Mandy, if you are not already listed on there as clinician, we can talk about that more later. We want to build that up so that people that need support can go there and find it. But go look on that too. That's a really good resource. It's a good starting point to know where to get help.
yeah, and I think as from a provider standpoint, for any of the clinicians that are listening right now, some of the biggest resources that I find super helpful is that clinician finder, because patients always are looking for someone to help, and not all specialists are familiar and
Mhm.
especially not all primary care providers. And that's our goal, of course, because that you guys are on the first line, such as nurses. That's why we like to tailor a lot to nurses too, especially like school nurses for peds, because those are the first, they're at the first line. They're going to be the ones that see these kids for reoccurring tummy aches, reoccurring headaches, feeling fatigued, all of that stuff. So if we can actually start having them look for those signs, it's great. So, but the clinician finder patient assessment tool, send your patients there, have them take it, because then they can email you their results so you can see their screening results too, and kind of
Mhm.
give you some footing on where you want to start with them. The book, so a lot of the appendix items that are in the book are also available as printable forms on the
Mhm.
website. And so that's super beneficial, like the clinical assessment form, the active stand test form that you can actually hand to your medical assistants or whoever is helping you with the visits for that day, so they can go ahead and get started on some of those findings and get you that before the appointment. And also in the book, okay, three things about the book. There's wonderful charts. So for as clinicians who are busy, you're trying to look and you have a patient that comes in that are on some medications that might help some of their symptoms for dysautonomia or whatever type they may have. There are very quick reference charts on pharmacological options for treatment, so you can see what possibly they're on those medications for really quick. And then another is non-pharm treatment, right? Where do we
Mhm.
start? And so I love those charts. The last thing I want in that new edition of the book is we did a research study. TDP did a
Mhm.
research study and had about 1,500 patients respond to it, and it talks about all their qualitative findings, symptoms, what condition they have, what were their top symptoms. And so looking at those can kind of help steer you towards maybe what type of dysautonomia that you're looking at based on the symptoms of these patients. So I love those things as a practicing clinician. So hopefully you'll find that super helpful too.
Awesome. Awesome. And where can people find you on the social medias if they want to learn more?
Well, the Dysautonomia Project is on Twitter and Facebook. I think they're even starting to do some Instagram things, and of course on our website. So we're really fortunate to have a great social media team. That is definitely not my expertise. So thankfully, we've got Ashley that works with us and some other folks that do a really good job. But yeah, just type our name into any of those and you'll see us pop up. We'd love for you to follow us.
Um,
And that's a good
I
place for patients to connect with each other too. We don't do support groups per se, although our website does have a list of patient resources so that patients can find support groups and other organizations that can help them. But patients do seem to connect quite a bit through our social media.
I will include all of those links on our show note as well so that people can just click. They don't even have to search it up. So I'll
Perfect.
do the searching work and get that on there so people can click and find you guys. Any last little bits of wisdom that you want to share as we wrap up today?
I would just encourage anyone listening to not give up hope. There are organizations like ours out there and clinicians like you both who will listen and validate and help get answers. So I hope that that's a source of encouragement because it can be a difficult road, but you're not alone.
Right. I echo that. I think that that's
Mhm.
probably the most important thing is that our mission is not only to educate, but the reason why we're educating is for those that find themselves stuck and just know that there are providers out there that are knowledgeable. And I guess one of my biggest things for, especially for patients, is don't stop advocating for yourself until you get the answers that you need. There are people out there, and we're just here to help you find them. Yeah, that's that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you both so much for being here today. This was a great conversation and I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this with others to help me continue on with my mission to help people live healthier, happier lives. Go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to see what I'm up to and get links to all the social medias there. See you next time.